Hey guys, it's Mrs. Wallace. I hope you guys are doing okay. I know there's a lot going on right now. I think we're all feeling that. But this is a case study about J. Wallace International, and I think it's a useful one just to get a sense of natural monopolies. So what we're looking at here, this is the natural monopoly, and we know that this is a natural monopoly. As soon as we look at it, there's nothing that's different on the demand side, downward sloping demand curve, downward sloping marginal revenue curve, that's less than the demand. What's typical, however, or the characteristic of a natural monopoly is that the long run ATC is expressing economies of scale. Okay, so over greater and greater quantities, we're seeing lower and lower ATC. So whenever you see this like elongated long run ATC curve, we know that we have a natural monopoly, right? This is a firm that's going to benefit from being big or being a single firm just because of the nature of the product that it's producing, and likely natural monopolies are going to be monopolies that governments will decide not necessarily to make illegal through like antitrust legislation, but rather to regulate it, and just to ensure that this is a monopoly that's not going to overcharge or undersupply the good, typical that monopolies do. Just one thing about the characteristics, just note the marginal cost curve here. At some point, that marginal cost curve would intersect with the long run ATC, but because this is economies of scale for the long run ATC, the marginal cost curve is just running, underneath it. It's the long run marginal cost curve. So we have here a company that is producing tickets and tolls, to cross a bridge, and they're pricing at $9 because they can. If we have 90,000 people going over the bridge every day who are willing to pay either $9 or above $9, that's kind of what we have. But we know we have 100,000 people who might like to cross the bridge, and maybe be at point Y or point Z. Let's figure, right. But the price is set at 9, and there's a couple of things about this. We can determine where a perfect competitor would actually produce, so we know the allocatively efficient quantity, which we can kind of assume is probably everybody, the 100,000 people. But in any case, where marginal cost and prices, so Z right there is the quantity that's allocatively efficient, okay? And some of you may have noticed this, but we have a little bit of problem if we're at Z. The problem is that if we mandate price H and we come in as regulators and say, okay, J. Wallace International, you have to set a price control at price H, what happens when they produce quantity Z is that a monopolist will be making a loss. The price of H, which kind of replaces any other price that could be a choice, the monopolist is kind of overridden with regulation. They can't produce where MR equals MC, so they would be producing price H. They would be making a loss because the ATC is above the price. And court cases have suggested that monopolists will sue and will have a case. So there's been some compromise through a variety of Supreme Court case that makes it available for regulators to come in and force a price more along the lines of price F. Price F suggests that quantity Y would actually be produced. It's not the socially optimal quantity, but it's certainly greater than X, and we call this price F the fair return price. It's kind of like where the monopoly is breaking even. Zero economic profit, but positive accounting profit. It's something that the courts essentially allow for regulators to come in and regulate monopolies. So we'll look at a PowerPoint really quickly that gives us a little bit of a sense of some of that terminology. Some of you might have also suggested, well, what if we subsidize? What if we subsidize consumers so that way we increase demand? What if we subsidize the producers so that we decrease the long-run ATC? And if you decrease the marginal cost, you might actually have a change in quantity. So if the goal is to get to this greater quantity, subsidies could totally work. Okay, it's not a bad idea at all. If that's something you were thinking about, you could not, however, tax. If you taxed, you'd create the opposite problem, right? Taxing a monopoly, which seems to make sense because, hey, this is a bad, thing that they're doing, they're overpricing. But when you tax, you increase the marginal cost and you shift the quantity to be less because the marginal cost curve shifts. Okie doke. Hope that helps, and hang on for the next video explanation, a little more notes